Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Such a lovely day today. You might be in the part of the country where it's not pouring down with rain, but no, it's just not only is it raining, it's grey and it's cold. And I'm like, I am not putting the heating on at the beginning of September. I will put my thermals on. So yes, I'm sat here now with thermal socks and thermal underwear, probably sharing too much here, but going, I am fine. I will be warm. I have got a cup of tea. Got my cup of tea. I can keep warm. It's not a problem. So yes. So we just have a couple more seconds to let people join. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through sickness absence and answer your questions about that. I have put in the chat, and I'm not sure whether everybody can see it, the link to our YouTube channel, because this is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the channel afterwards so that you can actually go and see it or give it out to other people in your organization to go and look at. It's not meant to be secret at all. Yeah, so it's all going to be there, and we do upload the YouTube ones every week. Well, it's supposed to be every week. I think there's been a bit of delay over the summer. And we also have our bite-size bites, which are quite good for senior management, not for this level who are attending here because you already know it, but for everybody else, it's like, here is 1 minute on what to do when somebody gives you in your notice. Here's 1 minute about disciplinaries, and it's just really quick to give them a taster to go, oh, I can't just do what I want to do. Okay, so we're going to go through this. I'm gonna just admit the last couple. If you could put yourselves on mute, just in case some background noise comes in, that would be lovely. And what I'm going to do is, yeah, that's fine. So we're going to do sickness absence. I'm going to go into sharing. If there are any questions, I'm going to say, I think we've got a good sized group here. If you want to just unmute yourself and ask, that's absolutely fine. If we get too many people, or too many people trying to speak at the same time, then if you put them into the chat, then I can go through them at different times. It's not a problem. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see that. If not, tell me now or forever keep your peace. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to go through managing sickness and mental ill health. I can also send out the PDF of this afterwards as well, and so you've got them both at the same time. This is when I go, I haven't done this for a while, so I need to be on the right screen to do that. There we go. Okay. So just as a background for some of you who haven't been working with us for very long, we currently have 297 clients on retainer, all small organizations, of which 212 are private member golf clubs. And we have a few proprietary ones as well, Mel. But 212 are in the golf club industry, which is a very interesting and sometimes challenging industry to deal with, and the rest are in the private sector. We work in mainland UK and Northern Ireland because the employment law is about the same in all of those areas. Ireland has different employment law, but we have clients in all of the kingdoms. We're a GCMA official supplier. That's a Golf Club Managers Association official supplier. We work very closely with them and have done for the past 12 years. We're also a partner of the 59 Club, who, if you're in hospitality, you should know about the 59 Club because they are very much on quality and I'm going to say standardization of service so that everybody gets the same experience when they work with you. We're also a member and a partner of the CMAE, which is the Club Managers Association of Europe, which again is for not only golf clubs but private clubs and the hospitality. So we're partners with them. If you haven't already had my book, I have a book on Amazon, Employment Law for Private Member Golf Clubs. I'm going to say, even if you're not a golf club, it would be good to go and read it, to go, oh my goodness, how could they do that? That's awful. Because it's very interesting. It's all the horror stories that we have, and I am collecting more now for the second book. So there's that there. And then there's the team. Now we've actually had 2 new people. Those of you who work with us will know we've had 2 new people join us, and we've got another person joining us next week. The reason being that, for a nice reason actually, Catherine has left us, not forever, but for a year, because she's on maternity now. Her baby is due today, tomorrow. Fingers crossed. We know how punctual babies are. But she's gone off, and together with that, which makes it even worse than it would have been already, we have the new government coming in with all the new plans for employment law. So there is going to be a lot of work, even if they just implement half of the manifesto promises. So this was the time to ramp up, make sure we've got the resource in-house so that we can support you whatever comes from the government. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do a quiz. Yay! On Kahoot. So I'm going to stop that share. What I'm going to bring up now is the quiz page, and it will have a QR code. Oops, sorry, clicked the wrong thing. QR code, and you need to scan that to join. 1 second. So let me just share that. Where are we? So you should be able to see the QR code at the top of the screen, and that should get you straight into the quiz. You can call yourself whatever you want, okay? Really, you can be Brad Pitt or Claudia Schiffer, and I'm showing my age now by naming old people. But you can be whatever you want, as long as it's not rude. But just be aware that it would be nice to know who you are, because if you win, you get chocolates. So if I can actually say, oh, it's so-and-so, then I can actually go and give you your prize, as it were. Oh, sorry, did I? Okay. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds. We've only got 5 people on there. I think there's more than 5 people attending. We've got 14 people attending. Okay. Now, if you don't want to actually compete, that's absolutely fine, but you can answer the questions, obviously. So the way we do this is we're going to ask a question, and then you have options for answers. So which of the following counts as a disability under the Equality Act 2010? So which of them, and it's more than one answer, okay? More than one answer is correct. And the other thing you need to remember with Kahoot, which I found to my detriment, is that it's also the speed of the answer. Okay, so cancer at the moment of diagnosis counts as a disability under the Equality Act, no matter what the cancer is, okay? And you would always have that as a protected characteristic, even if you were in remission. And diabetes counts as a disability. So a disability under the Equality Act 2010 is a condition or illness that affects your life for longer than 12 months. So that is the definition we use whenever we are saying they have this condition, would it count as a disability? That is the definition that we use to decide whether it's going to count as a disability. And I'm going to say we would normally err on the side of caution, because there might not be any case law at the moment, for example, saying that menopause is definitely a protected characteristic, a disability, but it is only a matter of time until it is, because it is something that affects your life for longer than 12 months, okay? An ulcerated heel, while horrible, is not going to be something I would hope that would last longer than 12 months, because it would be something very short-term to resolve. And alcoholism is an addiction, and addictions were specifically excluded from the Equality Act. The illnesses that come with the addiction, so liver disease, kidney disease, those would be included. They would be protected, but not the alcoholism itself. So you can't have somebody who works behind the bar saying, you have to let me drink whenever I want, otherwise I'm going to get withdrawal symptoms because I'm an alcoholic. But that's not a reasonable adjustment. I'm just letting you know. So, and my thing's gone, there we go. So school board, at the moment, we've got Milo and Dawn at the top and Lorraine close behind. There we go. So next one. When does protection from disability discrimination start for a new employee? Is it after a year, immediately, after their trial period ends, or after 2 years? Okay. It is immediately. And actually, it's difficult to phrase this question without giving away the answer. So the actual protection for any discrimination, any protected characteristic, is at the moment the advert goes out. So if you put in your advert, as one house manager did at a golf club, I think it'd be really funny, to say we want really tall, leggy, blonde females with large breasts who are happy to wear low-cut tops. There's luckily that one of the members saw that within 24 hours and said, do you think we should be saying that? The house manager left very quickly after that. But somebody can sue you for that advert. Okay. So you just have to, this is why we're saying be careful what you put in there. And it can even be the words. If you say we want an energetic, dynamic, those are young words and you wouldn't be able to put them in there. But certainly disability discrimination, you can't put in there, well, you can't say you can't be disabled, okay? And we're going to go through that in the sort of recruitment bit of this about what you should be doing, actually, to be honest, with all staff, not just the ones that are obviously physically disabled. Okay. Milo's keeping his place at the top there. What's the maximum award that a company would have to pay if they lost a discrimination case at tribunal? Is it 10,000, 1 million, unlimited, or 1 year's pay?
Finally being heard. She doesn't read anything, does she? If you read what he says, he actually did Janice send this out?
This is why we go on mute, so we don't listen to people's confidential conversations. So the maximum award is unlimited. This is why we're absolutely terrified. Not terrified, we're never terrified, but we absolutely take into consideration. How long can employees self-certify their sickness leave for? 7 calendar days, 3 calendar days, 5 working days, or they can't, they have to have a fit note. I think we're waiting for just one more, but that's fine. It is 7 calendar days. We work on calendar days because then there's no dispute about how long it is. If you use working days, well, is that Monday to Friday? Or is it their working days? And do they work weekends, or do they work 2 days and then 2 days after a break? So it just gets more complicated. And when we're dealing with sickness, we don't want to spend any more time trying to work out the background stuff than we should. So it's just 7 calendar days. That said, if you have in your processes that you would like to have a fit note from day one, you can put that in there, but there is usually a charge associated with that. The GP doesn't want to do that. So you would have to agree to pay the charge under the 7 calendar days. So Dawn zoomed up to the top. Well done. When is sickness absence considered long-term? After 2 consecutive sick notes, when it's something to do with a mental health issue, after 6 months absence, or after 4 weeks continuous absence. It is after 4 weeks continuous absence. And I'm going to say, if you get a sick note saying they're off with depression, anxiety, stress, anything like that, those are, I would ring immediately, because we're going to need to set in motion what our plan is if we get another sick note. So if they come in and they've broken their leg, that's a much more finite thing. I mean, it doesn't always heal properly, but it is more finite. Depression, anxiety can carry on. So don't wait until you've got the second sick note. Say, this person's been signed off with anxiety. Okay, what's been happening in the club or in the organization to actually make them go off with that? Do we know what's been happening? And we can then put things in place to deal with it. And because the aim is really most of the time to get people back to work. and doing their job properly as quickly as possible, but we need to support them, and we don't want to wait until they've been off for 6 months. That's what sometimes happens, and then they come to us, the client, and says, okay, so they've run out of SSP now, so should we start managing them? And it's like, no, we should have been managing them 6 months ago. Really, it's not impossible, but it's just we've wasted time now. So multi-select, more than one answer. How much sick pay do you have to pay? 1 week full, 1 week half, 1 month full, 1 month half, SSP, or it depends on the contract. It is either statutory sick pay, is SSP. That's the guidelines on that are set by the government. So you have to earn, at the moment, you have to earn the same as the lower earnings level, which is, I believe, £123 a week in a certain period of time, usually 8 weeks, to qualify for SSP. This is one of the things that the new government is looking to change, that they were talking about, saying that you could have SSP no matter what you earned. Okay, we'll see if that happens. There will probably be some sort of after 3 months or something like that, but it's just and it isn't that much. It's £116 a week, so it's not enough to live on anyway. So before we start getting indignant about people having it when they're sick, it's like, yeah, but it's like 2 Tesco shops. You can't pay any bills on that, because you can't pay energy bills from the 1st of October. So just be aware of that. But it's SSP as a minimum, and then if you've got more in the contract, you have to pay the contract. Now, you have to now, since April 2020, when we had more things on our mind than actual what is in the contract, you have to state in the contract all paid benefits. You cannot have paid sick pay as a discretionary benefit. You can't choose whether you pay Bob or Susan these things, and you shouldn't need to. You shouldn't need to make those decisions. You should just be, our entitlement is, for example, 1 week full pay, 1 week half pay after a year's service. That's it. Once they've used it, they're on SSP. You shouldn't have to go, oh, well, you know, I like Susan, she's really nice and she smiles at me in the morning, and Bobby's always grumpy, so I don't really want to pay him that. You shouldn't be having those conversations. If you're having those conversations in your organisations, you need to stop it, because you've got better things to spend your time on, okay? Oh, Lorraine's zipped up to the top. Well done. How long do you have to pay SSP, statutory sick pay, for? Is it 28 weeks, 12 weeks, 1 week for every year of service, or it depends on the contract? It is for 28 weeks, and then the clock, they would have to come back to work for 8 weeks continuously for the clock to reset, and then they would have the right to have another 28 weeks of SSP. I'm going to say we have never had somebody who did the full 28 weeks on SSP and then managed to come back to work for the full 8 weeks. We've had people who've managed to come back for 2 or 3 days, and then they've gone off, and then we've done a settlement agreement with them. But we've never had somebody who's come back deliberately for 8 weeks and then gone, oh, I'm ill again for 28 weeks. They don't do that, because there's not enough money in it. Okay, and if they're off genuinely for 28 weeks, they're usually very ill. Okay. So multi-select, more than one answer. Who can sign a sick note? A GP, a physiotherapist, a pharmacist, or a registered nurse? Who can sign the sick note? Who can sign the sick note? This was a change that was done, I think, 2 years ago now. All of them can now do that. I think I'm going to say time seems to fly at the moment. So I'm going to say it was probably in 22 that they changed this because there was too much pressure on GPs. I'm going to say I've not noticed any less pressure on GPs, but any of those people can sign the sick note. Okay. Lorraine, well done. Still at the top. True or false? The average number of sick days per year is 13.3 days in the private sector. True or false? It is false. It's actually 7.8 days. And that's including the tail end of COVID in there. So it's not that much, to be honest, given that we're not paying them necessarily at full pay. Okay, Lorraine, well done. Still at the top. Excellent. When can you make an employee have a medical assessment? When they've been off for over 4 weeks, when they've been having frequent sick days, when they have a disability, or you can't. Which one is the answer? You can't. Very good. I'm going to say these are people who've obviously worked with us. This is really good. So you can only request permission to contact the GP. Okay, you can't make them, you can't put it in your contract and say, well, you have to do this. Okay, you have to agree. You have to ask them specifically, and it's a separate letter. It's usually a 3-page letter advising them of their rights, because they can say no. Now, I'm going to say we've only had that a couple of times, and they have then agreed, strangely, to occupational health, but not to a GP's note. So a GP report. So I'm not quite sure what they were thinking there, but we haven't, even if they say no to a medical assessment, you can then make your decision based on the information you have. And they are not a medical expert. So if they say, I don't know, they've got a chronic disease, but you have no information about that and no sick notes and everything, it's like you're going to have to go on, well, actually, we're just going to have to treat it like flu. So it's not quite that straightforward, but you don't need to, it doesn't mean you can't do anything if you don't have the medical information. It does mean that you can just go ahead and say, well, you're refusing to help us to help you. So we're going to go ahead with this anyway. So who is at the top? So Milo in 3rd place, Dawn in 2nd place, well done. And I think it's Lorraine, isn't it? At the top. Yay, Lorraine. There will be some chocolates on their way to you. Well done. That's very good. Good. Okay, now, are there any questions at this stage before I go back to the PowerPoint? Is everybody quite happy? Clear as mud so far. Excellent. Good. Right, let's go back then to that. I'm going to close that down because it's playing a little tune in the background and I don't want the tune, to be honest there. So, share. Okay, so we've done the Kahoot. So, medical questionnaires. So we have this a lot, that particularly in the golf clubs, they want to ask medical questionnaires. You shouldn't be asking about medical history when people join. That used to be standard. It was about 10 years ago that they said, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. The main reason we don't do that, and I will go through the questions that are permitted, is because if you find out, for example, that they suffer from depression and you then withdraw your offer, that is disability discrimination. And I'm going to say even the law firms have been stupid enough to do that. Somebody said they suffered from depression, but they had medication now and it was all under control. And they said, oh, I'm really sorry, we've got a recruitment freeze, we're going to have to withdraw our offer. And they were sued and they lost because it was quite clearly because of the depression. So finding out about a disability or any other protected characteristic is not an advantage particularly. That sounds a bit strange, but if you know about it, you will always have to prove that whatever you've done is not because of that knowledge. So if you know that they suffer from depression, you will have to prove at every stage what you're doing has nothing to do with their depression. Okay, now once you know about it, okay, that's what you have to deal with. If you don't need to know about it, if they've not mentioned it when they're and they don't legally need to mention it, you cannot fire them from withholding information. You just have to deal with it when you find out. But if they don't tell you they're suffering from depression and they start working for you and then there's performance problems, you would manage that performance. If they then say, once you dismiss them, oh, but that was all because of depression. Yes, but you didn't tell us that before we dismiss you. You're only telling that after we dismiss you. Therefore, there's no disability protection, and you didn't know about it, and therefore you weren't dismissing them because of the depression. You were dismissing them because of their performance. But you would, as soon as you know about it, and by knowing about it, I mean anybody in the organization knowing about it, particularly at a level above the employee. So if your department head knows about it but has failed to tell HR while they're going through a disciplinary, the organization will legally be deemed to known about it, and then the process will not be solid. Okay, so if you find out in any way, be it at a social, after work, in a WhatsApp message at the weekend, you absolutely, you know about it. You can't say, oh yeah, but they told me at the weekend, so that doesn't count. It does count. If you know, you know, and you need to take that into account when you're doing anything. Okay. So you can ask about whether there's any reasonable adjustments to be made. You would say, you would literally say, do you need any reasonable adjustments made to be able to attend the interview, to take part in the recruitment process? And then in the actual interview, if it's going well, say, would you need any reasonable adjustments made to be able to do this job? And if they say no, then that's fine. But you wouldn't ask in any more detail than that. You need to, find out whether they can do an essential part of the job. This actually is a key thing. I know we're talking about disability here, but every single employee that you recruit, particularly if they change the law and you're not able to get rid of them outside of the probationary period, which is one of the things they have said they were going to do, you have to make sure that that person who says, oh yeah, I know how to operate this tool system, or I know how to do an Excel spreadsheet, or I know how to deal with Xero, you make them do that in your interview. You never, ever, ever take them at their word, okay? Because people can be very confident and think, oh, I'll just pick it up. But if you need them to hit the ground running, then you need to test it. And you need to test all employees. And I'm going to say the ones that are possibly more confident are the ones who are sometimes least able to do it, but they're just really good at blagging it. Okay, so you should, or if they've got to use an Excel spreadsheet and do certain things with it, and we had this at a general manager level, that the club said, well, he didn't know how to read a profit and loss statement. Well, okay, but did you ask them to do that in the interview process? No. Well, if it's key, if you're now saying he's got to go because he doesn't do that, why are you not testing that at the profit and loss level? I said it nicer, obviously, but you need to say, here's a profit and loss of a fictional company. You've got 5 minutes to study it, and then tell me what your concerns are. And that's what you do. And then they can say, and then you decide which one was the most on the spot. And people who go, oh yeah, well, they've got some money. Okay, so you don't know how to read profit and loss. That's fine, but you've got to test it. You can't assume, and that's whether it's a disability or not. You can take positive action to help somebody actually work for you because they've got the right attitude. And as we know, attitude is the biggest thing that you've got to get. The requirement that the job holder has a disability, or to establish that they've got the right disability. I don't think anybody on this call would have that necessarily, but there are some, I have read of certain charities where they are helping people with a disability, where they can then justify hiring people with a disability. In fact, it's a help, because then their employees can actually understand the needs of their clients. And then also to monitor diversity. So if you need to find out if you do have anybody with disabilities, you can ask that question. But like I said, you cannot dismiss or withdraw the offer because of the disability. Okay. Dealing with short-term sickness absence. You should always be doing return to work interviews. I do know it's a faff. I know it's a faff, but if you let it go on without doing that, then there's always going to be somebody who's going to take the mickey. We've had one today, a new client who's come on board, and we said, right, they were off sick for a week. We're going to do a return to work, and invited the employee to it, and the employee said, we've never done return to work. You can't make me. It's like, we are doing return to work, and we can't make you, but you are now refusing a reasonable management instruction. So just wanted to clarify you understand that. And then they were obviously very happy to do the return to work interview. So even after one absence, is sit down and say, hope you're feeling better. What was it that you were off with? And you need to ask questions. So I had a client where it was all men apart from 2 females. Okay, manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, in fact. And one of them was sort of mid-20s, a female, and she kept being off. And I said, well, she's had 20 days off this year. That's quite a lot. What's she been off with? And they said, women's problems. And I'm like, okay, but what women's problems? Are like, oh, we couldn't possibly ask. Can you come in and ask her, please? I'm like, but you can ask. And they're like, God, we can't. So I came in and she said, and I said, she was away. We did a return to work interview. And she said, and I'm going to say she wasn't being particularly cooperative. She said, well, yes, it's women's problems. So I'm like, oh, that's okay. You can tell me. I'm a woman. And she's like, oh, right. Well, it's this. And it turned out actually that it was a serious issue. She did have a serious health problem, but she'd not been to see the GP because she was thinking it was normal, or this is just something you have to put up with, because apparently it was a family thing that all the women in her family had it. And then she was telling me about it. I'm like, no, that not everybody has that. You should go and talk to your GP. And the GP could help her, and it was all resolved. But it's if people are saying, oh, I don't really want to talk to you. Okay, who would you like to talk to? We can arrange for someone from HR. It's not a problem. We can do that. You don't let them get away with, oh, yeah, I don't really want to say. Okay, we need to know. We also need to know, I'm going to say, the reason being from a health and safety perspective, because if there's something at work that is making them ill, you need to know what it is to try and rectify that, because obviously you've got your duty of care for all your staff. Notification, you've got to make sure that they have followed your notification procedure. It doesn't matter what your notification procedure is, but you need to make sure that everybody's following it. Okay, so if you say they have to ring in, make sure people are ringing in. If they can notify you via WhatsApp, that's fine. It doesn't matter what it is, but that they are following it. I'm going to say that is one of the ways that we do part company with people with certainly short service people who have disabilities, because sometimes, not disabilities, that's unfair, who say they have disabilities, is that they don't follow the absence reporting procedure. So you need to make sure that everybody understands that. And after the first time that they don't follow it, you say, here's how you notify us of sickness. Please do it this way going forward. And if they don't, again, refusing reasonable management instruction, potential disciplinary, and dismissal if they're under 2 years, because it's like, you need to follow our policies. It's not, there is no reason, and we've not come across one in the last 21 years, for anybody who has a disability to not be able to follow the procedure. If they can come up with a reason why they shouldn't, that's fine. Agree a specific procedure with them, but don't let them just do whatever they want every time. Okay. Self-certification, like we talked about just now in the quiz, 7 calendar days, they can fill out a form saying, I was off sick with a tummy upset, with flu, whatever that is. Be aware though, look for patterns with self-certification. We had one golf club where it turned out they were moaning about a new employee who'd had 6 days off that year. Okay, so I said, right, what else is happening in that department? How many days are they having off? Is that too little, too much? What's going on? Turns out that the first week in June, the head greenkeeper was off with flu for 1 week, self-certified. The second week in June, the deputy greenkeeper was off for a week with flu. The third week, the first assistant greenkeeper was off with flu. And so the 4 people that have been there longer had the whole of June, had a week extra holiday because it was full pay in June with flu. There's no flu in June, stop it. So we're like, that's a bit weird. Went back, they've been doing it every year for 5 years. And nobody in the office had noticed. I don't know why they wouldn't notice. It's just like, oh, that's strange that the greenkeepers have all got flu in June. Very strange. No, nobody paid any attention until they started moaning about this new person who they didn't like and they were trying to get rid of. So we then went and made them, the greenkeeping team only, had to have a sick note from the GP from the first day of absence, and we would pay the charge. Guess what? The next year, nobody had flu. Go figure. So self-certification, they can do that, but just look for any patterns that is there, okay? Fit notes are saying that they are not fit to work, okay? They might say that they can do light duties. If the GP says they can do light duties, you can have that conversation with the employee as to what light duties they are, and you can also pay them less than their full salary to do those light duties if you want to. Okay, but if the GP does not say, or whoever's written the footnote does not say light duties, you cannot go back to the employee and say, can you do light duties? Because that would be seen as putting them under duress to go back to work. Okay, so you don't do that unless it's on the sick note. Nobody will give your employee this person is fit and healthy to go back to work. Nobody. Not even pre-COVID would they do that. Okay, they are not doing what's it called, a medical assessment of them. They will have written off done a sick note, said it's normal for, I don't know, to recover from this illness in 2 weeks, therefore you're signed off for 2 weeks. If there's a problem, you come back to me and I'll sign you off again. Otherwise, you're good to go. If you're good to go, you're good to go. There are still a lot of organisations say, oh, you need to go back to your GP and say, oh, that you're definitely okay to come back to work. They do not have the capacity to do that, and they are not willing to do it, and don't waste your time. Okay, if they are due back, they're due back, and you monitor their performance. And if there's problems, we're going to have a conversation and say, why is it that you can't do this and that and the other? And we might send them off again to go to the GP, but you have to let them back to work. There is no getting you are fit to work. Okay. And you need to be aware of case law, because sickness is not defined in something as convenient as the ACAS guidelines. It is all based on case law. So you have to keep up to date on those decisions. I'm going to say there's a lot less sickness, absence issues, as opposed to disability issues that go to tribunal. So it's really that's really not contentious in our experience about dealing with sickness. It's only if we've got disabilities that's a problem, but it is, as I said, monitored and decided by case law rather than written down law. Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, Dawn, yeah.
So, like, if they have a fit note, am I right in thinking, so say they've been signed off for 4 weeks, but they feel better in 3 weeks, they can still come back. They don't, because it's just advisory. So if I feel better, I can come back. I don't need any other documents. That's my decision.
Yes, that absolutely is. Yes. And I'm going to say we usually only find out about that when the organisation doesn't want them to come back, because they're actually enjoying them being off. It's like, please stay off. So what you could do if you didn't want them to come back is doing that health and safety assessment. You do a risk assessment on the first day as well as a return to work. It's like, are you really 100%? If you are, they have to stay. And if they're not, then you could discuss with them, just do half days, something like that. Okay.
Also, you also need to be careful that you don't breach your insurance if they come back earlier. So if they say that they're well to come back after 3 weeks and they're not well enough to come back after 3 weeks, even if you've done that, they have an accident, it then puts the company at risk.
I'm not quite sure what insurance that would be.
No.
Because there really isn't an insurance. So you've got your employer's liability insurance that makes sure you do the right things, but you're not making them to come back. You're not saying you have to come back even though you're ill. They are saying, I'm well enough to come back. So that's why you're doing the return to work meeting and the risk assessment of whether they are able to do it. It's not a blanket, you can't come back early because that invalidates our insurance. It's not that straightforward, unfortunately. That is something we hear a lot, but it actually, I'm going to say, I probably need to talk to my insurance. I don't think that is something that the insurers care about, as long as you have taken due care to see whether they are fit to come back to work. Yeah. But I think I will actually go and investigate that with my insurers and see if they come up with anything, and then I can share that with the group as well. Okay. When does it count as long term? As I said in the quiz, after 4 weeks. But if you've got somebody who's been signed off for 4 weeks, that will be the time to call us once you get that sick note. Don't wait until the end of the 4 weeks and then another one comes in, because we need to sort out the strategy about what we're going to do. You get the fit notes. They shouldn't need to call you. We wouldn't expect them to be in touch with you within the length of that fit note. So it's all very well. I know some organisations have, well, you've got to call in weekly. No, if they've got a fit note saying they're signed off for 4 weeks, that's it. We do tend to recommend that you send them an email or a WhatsApp, whatever you normally communicate via, saying, hi, Caroline, really sorry to hear you're still not feeling well. Looking forward to welcoming you back at work on, and then the day after the fit note expires. That's it. And let us know if we can help in any way. Something that neutral, because the flip side sometimes is that they're like, well, I've been signed off for 4 weeks and you haven't contacted me because you're signed off for 4 weeks. Yeah, but I don't think you'll miss me and you don't care about me, and that's bullying and intimidation. It's like, well, it's not. But for the sake of a standard email every Monday saying, hope you're feeling better soon, see you on the Monday, then that's easy to do and could not be construed as putting them under pressure to return to work. Okay, but they also would not be expected to be in touch with you. We can offer them welfare meetings, we're going to come to that, but they do not have to accept them until they're back at work. Okay, which might not ever happen. I appreciate that. Reasonable adjustments. If they have got a disability or a protected characteristic, you are supposed to look at reasonable adjustments to enable them to come back to work. So we had one of the bigger golf clubs that had 2 levels, and they had a cleaner, an employed cleaner, and she could no longer go upstairs. She could do the work, but she just couldn't do the stairs. And they had a rule that cleaners were not allowed to use the lift because it was that type of club. And so we said the reasonable adjustment is that you allow her to use the lift because she's in there at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's no members that she's going to offend, for goodness sake. Let her use a lift. And then that was a reasonable adjustment. It would it would not, however, be a reasonable adjustment to install a lift. If you don't have a lift and there are stairs and they can't go upstairs, you don't have to install a lift to let them go upstairs. Okay, because some people do go, oh, I'm going to have to do all these things. You don't have to do all those things. But again, sorry, reasonable adjustments are, we're approaching it from what would the court say was reasonable, rather than what do you say is reasonable. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Okay, stress at work. Be aware that stress at work is not a disability. This has gone to court several times, and they've said it's not a disability because it is situation specific. Now, if you are stressed at work, you know that that is not quite that straightforward because it spills over into your private life. But what the court is saying is that if you left that job, your stress would go. Therefore, it's not a disability. Very sorry, got a bit of frog in my throat. So it doesn't count as a disability. It's the mental health equivalent of flu, but it does mean there's obviously something going on at work and something needs to be dealt with. So that's when, if they go off signed stress at work, we're not worried about the medical aspect of that, but we are, what has been going on? Has there been bullying, intimidation? What has been happening to make them put down stress at work? And can we deal with that? Whether we're dealing with it to get them back or whether we're dealing with it to make it, you know, a settlement agreement conversation, but we need to make sure we've dealt with whatever it is, because if one person's going off with stress at work, there may well be other people that there can sometimes be legacy employees who are a bit toxic towards new people, and you don't want to encourage them in that. Okay. That you can ask, this was about for getting more medical information, you can ask for a GP report, or they consent to get a GP report, or ask if they're willing to do an occupational health report. I'm going to say GP reports, huge delays at the moment. They're obviously, I mean, it was never quick. It was never quick. Even back in 2010, it was never quick. But now we've had one in at a GP since the 10th of July. And they have still not provided it, and they said it's going to take another 4 weeks because we're so busy. And even you pay about £90 for it. That it's pointless. I would just say, just don't even bother with the GP's report now. The GPs have got enough to do. Let's just go for occupational health, which will be a video consultation. They are very, very averse, the occupational health people, to doing site visits. They've priced it, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, about £1,000 for a half-day site visit. But they will do video consultations, and those can be arranged within a couple of weeks. And we would then brief the occupational health person on the situation. They would ask questions, and then they will come back with their evaluation. Okay, we although it sounds like that is a system that could easily be used by the employee, I'm going to say it actually works pretty well, because it is a medical person who is used to dealing with employees who are potentially being fluid with the truth. So I'm going to say it has worked very well for us, despite the potential for lying, because the people lying don't know enough about what they're lying about to lie convincingly, to say what their symptoms are convincingly, whereas the person who's interviewing them, the medical professional, has made sure they know all the details about that condition that is being claimed, and so they can tell when somebody's making it up. They never say that. It's very much more diplomatic language, but you know, they can spot when somebody's making it up. Phased return. So this is then if the GP said, okay, they're going to be off for 4 weeks or even 2 months, I've seen, is that they might not be able to come back to work full time from day one. And so we would be having a welfare meeting with them sort of in the last week, saying, okay, you're due to come back next week. You still want to come back? Yes, I do. Okay. What we're going to suggest is that you do a few hours every day, not full days, because that's going to wear them out. But say start off with 3 or 4 hours the first week, and then the second week doing 4 or 5 hours, and then the third week working up. The disadvantage of that, or is it legally, you don't have to pay them in full. You only have to pay them for the hours they worked. So they would have a financial detriment, but it is going to be more than SSP. That usually works really well. I've only had it not work once, but that was the guy was suffering from depression, and he managed 1 week, and then he said, I can't, I don't want to work here anymore. Nobody was doing anything bad to him. He was just suffering, so he just resigned, which was unfortunate. But it wasn't because of anything the club was doing. We'd done the phased return, but everybody else has just gradually got higher and higher, and it's made it a lot easier to get people back to work. Like I said, if you don't want them back to work, then we're having a different conversation anyway, settlement agreement conversation. Oh yes, the greenkeeper, a club came to me and said, can we just issue him with this P45 because he's been off for a year sick? And I'm like, okay, what's he off sick with? Don't know. Oh, okay, but you must have something from him saying why he's off sick. Oh, well, he sort of self-certified at the beginning, and then he said he was going to the doctor. Right, sorry, a year ago, yeah, and you've had a GP's note. Well, we had one for 4 weeks, right? Okay, and then after that, yeah, no, we didn't get anything after that. Okay, so how much money have you paid him? They paid him 6 months full pay, and then the rest at SSP without any sick notes, without any contact to him, no GP notes, nothing at all. Because I don't know, they didn't know how to ask. It just seems strange, and they not asked anybody about what should we do about this. And they were like, yeah, so we haven't heard anything. He's not being paid anything. So can we just dismiss him now? And I'm like, well, yeah, let's try and do that. I don't think we should. I think it will. If we do it, you have to be aware it's illegal if we do that. But let's see, because we actually, it sounds awful. We didn't even know whether the guy was still alive because they had no information whatsoever. So we issued the P45, and luckily nothing ever came back. So whatever it was, maybe the guy moved on somewhere else and had a different job. We never know. But it's just, you have to get the sick note. You have to get that documentation. And you need to make sure you've got people in the process, because it's to protect the organisation, but it's also to protect the employee and make sure that they know that you know what the right thing to do is. Okay. And as always, there's no tribunal fees. Dawn.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can I just ask a question about the phased return? So like if they were coming back 3 days a week and they didn't have any company sick pay left, could they and maybe they're coming back Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so you've got Tuesday and Thursday. Could they, if they've got accrued holiday, take that as accrued holiday in between? Or could they take that as SSP, because it's sort of the breaking up of, how does that work?
So both of those actually are possible. So if they've got a lot of holiday because they haven't taken anything, that would be something you could suggest to them. They don't have to agree to it, but they could use that. They could also use holiday for the half days. So SSP can be used for full sick days, but not for half days. So you could use SSP because SSP, like I said, it gets paid for 28 weeks. And it, even if you're not officially paying it, but you are always implied in paying it. So even if you're paying full pay for, say, the first month, according to SSP legislation, the first day of SSP is that first day of absence. It doesn't kick in after you've started, or it shouldn't, after you've started paying them full pay. So legally, you pay SSP from day one, and you've topped it up to their normal pay. So it would be a continuous period of sickness absence. So like you said, Dawn, you could have the Tuesday and Thursday being sick days because they're not waiting days, because it's still the same continuous absence. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Right. Mental ill health. We'll do more on this another day, but that is one that comes up more and more, as we all know. You need to be keeping an eye on people for their changes, and it doesn't mean that there's a change necessarily to the worse, but there is a change in their behavior, and being aware of what that change is. Okay. If they're tired or anxious, they're not interested, they don't say good morning anymore, they just go, oh. And when you say good morning and they say, is it? It's like, okay, that was amusing the first time, now it's not amusing. Increase the sickness, absence, or turning up late to work. That's why we do the return to work forms and the self-certification, and make sure we've got that, so we don't just go, oh, I don't really know why they were off. We should always know why they were off. You need to also keep an eye on working hours and what tasks they're doing as well. Is it that they're getting slower, or they're getting more distracted, or they're using work as a way to avoid their other problems? Okay. We had mental ill health, somebody sending emails at 2 a.m. and unfortunately they were sending them to their boss, and their boss did not say at any point, don't send me emails at 2 a.m. One, I don't want any emails at 2 a.m. But two, you should not be working at 2 a.m. So if you get people working outside of their hours, and I appreciate each organisation is slightly different, but we are going to have that right to disconnect as well with the new government. You shouldn't be letting them work in the middle of the night, because that is in a working time regulations infringement. They have to have a break between their working hours. Otherwise, it's a health and safety infringement, and it's not only a disability, the mental health, they can sue you for that working time regulation. Okay. And in this case, this person sending emails at 2 a.m. then did bring a claim, which ended up as a settlement agreement, saying that her boss had basically encouraged her to send them because he had not told her to stop. And his defense was, well, she's a grown-up, she can decide her own working hours. Well, yes and no. You actually have to enforce it, because the buck stops with the organization. So just like PPE, the protective equipment, if your staff are supposed to wear it and they say, well, I don't want to because it's uncomfortable, there is nothing you can do that says you as your employer are not liable. If they are, then if there's an accident, you will be slammed, because you have to make them wear PPE. It's a disciplinary offence if they don't. If it's uncomfortable, buy different PPE. Make sure they wear it. It's just, there is no way. And the same with working time regulations and working hours. You are fully responsible for making sure they get their breaks. So if you don't, you can't say, oh, well, they're grown-ups, they can decide. That doesn't work in employment law. Okay. And if they come to you in tears saying that they feel overwhelmed, do not respond to them as one person did, one manager did, which of course was expensive, saying you are unmanageable. You're just unmanageable. You're always bursting into tears. It's like, can you hear yourself? That was a £15,000 settlement agreement for that one. See, really, just show a bit of empathy, really. Okay, so if you're how to deal with it, this is obviously the very quick one, because there's a lot more you could do on mental health, is you need to ask how people are doing and listen to the answer. Sometimes they just want to have a quick 5 minutes, and I know all of us are very busy, but it is often just a 5 minutes thing to hear, oh, it's really tricky at home, and and say, oh, okay, well, is there some, I don't know, childcare? It's less now, we've come out of some holidays again, but it's like, would it be good if we could talk about changing your house for a couple of weeks? Oh, that would be really good. There you go, sorted. I'm not saying you have to do that, but it's just, if you talk to people, that's good. And if people say they're fine, I don't know any of you whether anybody's been in therapy. This is not a trick question, but in therapy, fine is not something you're allowed to say, because what it stands for is fully incapable of normal emotions. Okay, so if somebody says, well, I'm fine, no, Yeah, I'm going to need a different word. You're going to have to give me a different word. Happy, sad, frustrated, tired, annoyed, something else. Fine doesn't cook it. So if somebody is always saying, oh, I'm fine, you can tell, we're all humans, that we can tell that that's not true. So say, oh, okay, because you don't seem fine. You seem a little bit upset, and have that conversation. I'm not saying you should do it for hours, but 5 minutes will pay off. Okay. Oh yeah, okay. Create an environment. We did this for a while actually. We got out of the habit, but I think we should do it again. So every morning when we come in, we say, where are you on the scale? So rather than, because we did go through a thing at work of people saying they were fine, and then they weren't. It's fine, we dealt with it, it's all good. But it's then actually, rather than having to say in detail, it's just say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, where are you this morning? And we made 5 being, oh my God, this is the best day ever. This is fantastic. This is great. And 1 was, I just want to go back to bed and never speak to a person ever again. That's what I want to do. And you could then, without them having to say all the bit behind number 1, they say number 1. And then you could just say, okay, what could we do now to get you to number 2? What can we do? Would you like can I get your coffee? Can I get you a piece of chocolate? We always have chocolate in our office. Would you like some chocolate? Are you too cold? Are you too hot? What could it? And usually, and it worked really well, because they could say just a tiny thing, made them feel better, made them feel heard, that somebody had noticed that they weren't in a good place without them having to go into tears and everything about it. And it meant that they could then creep up to 3. We didn't often get to 4 on those days, but they could get up to 3. And that's all we did. We wanted them to end the day better than they started it, you see. And there were even a couple of days that were even 5s. Not many, you're in the office, we love our work, but 5 day is not, it's more when you're on holiday. But that's a really easy way that people don't have to share a lot of detail, but it does make you go, oh, okay, you're at a 3 today. That's good. Just beware, mental ill health is not contagious. It isn't contagious. Talking to somebody who's depressed is not going to make you depressed. It's all very fine. Okay. And if they come to you, how should you handle it? Don't compare it, say, oh, my sister-in-law had that, but she's did or it was really bad for her. It doesn't sound like it's bad for you. It's like, no, we don't do that. All we're doing is like, how are you feeling right now? And again, that 1 to 5 would help with that. How are you feeling right now? What could I do to make it feel better right now? Okay. Anything we can do to support you. Don't make jokes about it. You're just being empathetic. It's like, how can we help? Okay. And once you've heard that they've got an issue, don't ignore it. We did have somebody in a slightly more corporate client who didn't want to talk, didn't want to even say good morning to this one lady in his department, because he's like, she always looks like she's about to burst into tears when I say good morning to her, so I'd rather not say good morning. So he only said good morning to everybody else except her, which made her feel even worse. And it's like, oh, you're not dealing with this very well, are you? And it's like, once we actually sat down with her and worked out what the problem was and everything, it was all good. And we could get him back to saying good morning. But don't ignore what you're being told, okay? If you don't know how to deal with it, that is a perfectly normal reaction. Talk to HR. We will talk it through. Even if you know what it is, it's like, I just think this is what I should do. Yeah, that sounds great. Try it. Let's see what happens. Or if you say, this has happened, I have no idea where to start. Where should I start? And it's sometimes easier for somebody who's standing that bit further back to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Would you think that would work? And we can even have those conversations with the employees as well, if you think it would help. Okay. And make sure you ask for more info. I would always also say, if they're saying, oh, I've been feeling really down, I would ask, have you seen your GP? Okay. Because the GPs have recently, I'm going to say in the past 10 years, it feels like a long time, but they have had a lot more training on how to deal with mental ill health, and particularly depression, much more so than previously, where you would have been fobbed off or given antidepressants. They actually do put you into talking therapies and things like that now. So it's like, if they haven't spoken to their GP, they really should go and do that. The other alternative is, if you've got private medical, there's usually an employee assistance program as part of that they could go and talk to. And we have a separate employee assistance program provider that we have, where they get therapy sessions, 12 therapy sessions a year as part of it, as well as access to medical advice. So There's lots of ways that you can support these people without you feeling that you have to be doing it all yourself. Okay. Good. So lots of information. Like I said, I will do it. If you would like the PDF, I'm going to say I'm not going to be able to write down everybody's name. If you would like a copy of the PDF, if you could send me a quick email at clients@GapHR, then I will send out the PDF later today. And I hope, could everybody see in the chat the YouTube link? I'm not sure. Let me just see if I can do that again. There we go. There's the YouTube link. So there's this one is going to be put up. I can't guarantee it's going to be today, but I will get it up there by tomorrow. So you've got that to look at. And there's all the other videos on there as well about bite-sized things. Okay. Any questions that come from this, obviously get in touch with us and we can help you. Before I go now, are there any questions right now from anybody, or is everybody gloriously happy? No, good. Everybody's gloriously happy. Excellent. We'll go away, process it, and then come back to us. As I said, this is something that we can deal with together quite easily. But you do need to make sure that you're following the right processes so that everybody's treated in a fair and reasonable manner. Good. Next week, normal Q&A for everybody. We'll see you then. Take care. Bye.